Your organization is doing really good work. And one of the key messages that your organization promotes is a strong U.S. auto industry. How important is a strong U.S. auto industry? Because you hear terms, oh, it's the backbone of America. But in your opinion, how important is a strong U.S. autos industry?
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, listen, the auto industry here in the US is extremely important for the manufacturing sector here in the US, for all the jobs that it creates here in the US, and both the direct and the indirect jobs, and what it does for our communities here in the United States. But it's just really important that the US have a globally competitive auto industry, right? To be able to compete with other industries or other countries out there that also have auto industries. We believe here in the US, we have the most competitive auto industry, and we have that for a couple of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But really, it has to do with the fact that we've got the North American region that is so highly integrated that really allows us to be such a strong competitive force.
Obviously, there's geopolitical issues. How does the U.S. continue to stay competitive in I'll call it a changing global economy?
Sure. So again, I think that has to do a lot with USMCA, to be honest with you. And that is something that went into force actually back in 2020. It was in President Trump's first term, where this was his first big trade agreement with Mexico and Canada. And obviously it's important for other industries as well, but for the auto industry, it's critically important. So we went from NAFTA, and then some changes were made, and now we have USMCA. But for the auto industry, Mexico, Canada, the U.S., our supply chains are so integrated that it is really critically important that it remains, this USMCA remains in force and actually viable. Because, you've probably heard the term, a vehicle crosses the border, whether it's Mexico or Canada, maybe 7 times before it's fully completed, with the inputs going back and forth. And that is absolutely true. So while we produce a lot of vehicles here in the U.S., we might get pieces of it from Mexico or Canada or vice versa. And so having a strong integrated North American market has really made the U.S. auto industry so competitive.
What impact has it? And I couldn't believe it. We finally did it. A rail now legally, the same operator can go from Mexico, United States to Canada, all on one track now, fully legal, fully operational without having to change. Has that had a positive impact from, because obviously the auto industry, it has a complex tiers of suppliers. Has that had a positive impact where you're able to get your members, are able to get supplies faster, more cost effective than traditionally they were?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, we try to do as much as we can, obviously here in the U.S., because the closer the supply chain is, the better, right? The easier it is and the less expensive it is. But you can't do everything here in the U.S. And so that is why some things are done in Mexico, some things are done in Canada, and yet we're all so close, right? Our closest neighbors, our closest allies that we've got, that these resilient supply chains with all 3 countries that really make the U.S. automotive industry, like I said, so competitive and allows us to produce as many vehicles as we do here in the U.S.